The Southern African Venture Capital and Private Equity Industry Association wants Regulation 28 to be amended to support the economic recovery plan. Now, that regulation of the Pension Fund Act limits the extent to which retirement funds may invest in certain assets. To talk some more about it, I'm joined by the association's Tanya van Lill. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, you know, when regular people hear that people want to make changes to the Pension Fund Act, it really does send anxiety spiking a little bit. And that's probably understandable. Can you explain in layman's terms what exactly you feel should be changed in Regulation 28 for growth to happen?
Morning, Marcel, and thank you for asking. In terms of Regulation 28, it says that 15% of the assets that pension funds can allocate to an asset class, or in this case, is to what we call alternative asset class. In other words, the kinds of asset classes that aren't listed on a stock exchange. So within the unlisted space, you've got private equity and hedge funds within that 15% cap. And that cap is to ensure that a pension fund don't overexpose themselves to one asset class. But what we're asking for is for that private equity and hedge funds be separated under that particular banner, because currently it's grouped together as unlisted assets. And the two asset classes are very different and each have their own risk and return profiles. So it makes it very difficult for pension funds to measure their risk return profile and to manage hedge funds and private equity separately.
Now, but you do understand why that regulation was put together in the first place, because I suppose when it comes to people's pensions, they want to expose that very important amount of money from being at risk in any way, shape or form. Would there be a way to change it to ensure that that risk stays minimal?
So what we're saying is that separate the two asset classes into its own categories and give each category their own cap or their own ceiling to ensure that there isn't overexposure to either of the two asset classes. And then over time, as we see the economic imperatives of South Africa, they increase particularly the private equity cap within that space, because private equity invests in companies that help with growing jobs, sustainable investing, infrastructure and renewable energy is also part of that spectrum, and that's where we think the growth for the future is needed.
Now, pension funds were also a topic of discussion just a few days ago when the head of economic transformation for the ANC again brought up the suggestion of changes needed to the very same Regulation 28. Do you feel in a position to comment on that? Would the changes be similar, or are we talking about a different part of Regulation 28?
It's very similar, but for us, the private equity in particular is where we feel the growth is going to happen. Private capital is needed to help grow the businesses that can create sustainable jobs, and also invest in the infrastructure that can create jobs and ensure the economic recovery of the country.